Gyana Timirandasya Jananjana Jalakaya Chakshur Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sa Padantikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. This is a place we call Nandagram. It's located in northeast Brazil, more specifically just by the river called São Francisco River. It's a great river, and it borders two states. There's Bahia, where we stay, and on the other margin there is Pernambuco. These two states share this river, which nourishes here many crops like mango crops and fruit crops and so many vegetables, and many agricultural produces come from here, mostly in a chemical farming configuration. So this land here where you are, we came here in 2020. You might remember the pandemic and how everybody was thinking that there might be a food crisis, the food chain might be lost, and everybody started thinking maybe it's a good time to go and live closer to the land. Actually, we did the same. We came to Brazil, and this piece of land is with the family for 50 years, almost 50 years. And this part was never used except for neighboring farmers who had their animals graze here. They cut wood for firewood. They would dig sand and clay for different purposes. So the land became degraded over time. When we arrived here, it was quite dry. The vegetation was very scarce. This place where you are looking at, it used to be bare land. There was nothing growing here. You can check the photo and you can see what a transformation in only 3 years. We started working on this area 3 years ago. And what we did is we understood that most of the nutrients are stored in a plant, in the trunk. And all the zinc, molybdenum, potassium, it's all here, intertwined in lignin proteins along these plants. So what we did is whatever vegetation was here, thorny tree like babu here, and many other plants, we just cut it and we put it in these rows. And we started planting different crops which were very resistant to drought, and gradually we're transforming the environment, and now you can see you can have bananas and pigeon peas and hibiscus and cassava and so many other different crops are here. Some of these trees we call service trees. We just plant them, and then when they're big we cut and we put the biomass down, like this yellow flower, which is a beautiful biomass material, and it stays there. So Nandagram is a place which started off just as an experience of a couple who were looking for some nice environment in the countryside to produce their own food, to homeschool their children. And it evolved to something quite more significant. Why is it important today to have this lifestyle? I think the pandemic was a wake-up call where we realized that our food chain is so fragile. It's a system, and that system is relying on so many fragile aspects. For example, if you were to remove fossil fuels today, everything would just come to a halt immediately. In a few days, the whole system would just stop. And naturally, we could, with our human intelligence, walk away, but that will be a huge crisis with tremendous effects in the whole lifestyle we live today. So, why is it important? Well, first, because we are very distant from our food supply systems. food being shipped from one continent to another, to one country to another, and it all becomes very insecure. So it's really important to have food security for communities, for families, for the social fabric to work very nicely. Secondly, why is it important? Because we go to the supermarket today, we buy fruits which looks extremely gorgeous and beautiful, but inside they have not been fed with the nutrients to give them zinc, molybdenum, and so many other substances. So the food we eat today, it's a little bit empty. It's a little bit empty in terms of nutrition, especially zinc. Zinc has been discovered to be the absence of zinc, to be the cause of so many mental diseases, including depression. And today, depression is one of the 10th leading disease causes in the world. So you can see the relationship between what you eat and how you feel, your wellness, It's also important because it gives you a sense of purpose in life. You as a being in this planet, I have a purpose, which is to transcend, to find higher values. And this food, this nature, this environment is helping me to transform my energy into something proactive into the world. And this, of course, leads to the next, and I'd say one of the most important reasons, that we need to take care of Mother Earth, because she is the one who nurtures the whole humanity. Where can we go if we mistreat Mother Earth? So anybody living in a town with a job today will find a stressful routine and the distancing from relationships. Everybody's trying to find relationships today, and the way the lifestyle is organized, it's not helping relationships. It is basically making your relationships more sophisticated. Sometimes two people in the same house text rather than speak and come to some conclusion. And that leads to a great problem in the social fabric. We start to not develop and nurture relationship. Like here, we're developing a relationship with these plants, and we are actually understanding what kind of nutrients they need and what kind of system they need to thrive. So what we are proposing in Nandagram is a living lab. A living lab is a place where you could experience, like we have experienced here with the native vegetation and exotic plants together, like sorghum and so many other varieties. And then we get research, and we understand scientifically how to make these changes. And finally, when we're ready, we teach. So a living lab is a place where we learn by experience and by scientific input. And then that leads to a proper know-how on how to deal with this particular space, this particular biome, this particular geography, and how the plants structure themselves in a design. Because every plant is here and they know where they belong. Which height? Is it like low? Is it medium? Is it high? Is it emergent? All these trees know where they stand. And when the proper configuration is put, the production is potentialized. Because now you leave the 2D dimension where you only produce in 2D, and you go for a 3D dimension where you have different stratas producing different things over time, which is the succession, the duration of a life, the life cycle of a plant. So this is a system which traditionally here is called agroforestry system. So Nandagram is set to establish a model where people will come, experience, they'll learn from scientific inputs, and then they'll be ready to teach. And this is the first living lab we are scientifically presenting for ISKCON. And after that, we hope in the next 10 years, we can establish 32 of these living labs. In fact, just in the meeting of the GBC in India, Mayapur, we found that the leaders were very excited when we announced that we might have 32 of them in the next 10 years. And so there's scope, considering that we have 1,000 centers globally today and only 65 farms. That means the scope for having more farms and more farms becoming this living labs, which is hubs of learning and teaching and sharing knowledge, is great. And Nandagram this whole property is 55 acres. This is half of the property, or less than half of the property, of this property. Nandagram holds 22 hectares, which is something like 55 acres. And the other part of the farm, which does still traditional farming, holds 85 acres. This part, we've chosen 20 acres to set as a low-cost living lab. We want to show that with low cost and by understanding nature, working with nature, not against it, we can produce in a way that people have abundant food and they'll know how to deal with nature. They'll be protecting nature at the same time that they're producing food. And not only food, but medicinal herbs and wood and flowers and all the needs and oils, essential oils, aromatic oils. All of this generates a big, abundant layer. So if you look at our project, we design it in a way that there is an area where we have the social part. There's a school here which has been standing there for 25 years. Yes, it's a primary school. Nobody in the region wanted to give a piece of their land to establish the school. But my father, Manuel Abilio, he was very kind, and he decided to donate a piece of land for the school. And so the school started, it evolved. Today it takes care of 80 children. Yes, 80 children. And they study here. So we thought this project should interact with the school by establishing an organic, regenerative, syntropic orchard to teach them how to live with these principles of, water preservation, biodiversity. I don't have to cut all the vegetation and establish a monocrop to get the money to buy everything I need. So I'm stuck in a system where I depend on money and fossil fuels for everything. I can have a different take on life. And then we're teaching them also how to make a house from local materials. We started making these mud structures called hyperadobe, which is very stable and very tested by many builders, and it's being widely accepted as a good technique to build houses. So the students would understand that they can live off the land, and hopefully this would inspire them to stay here and not try to find a job in a city where it's all so hard and the whole system and the whole cycle starts again. So Nandagram has that social dimension of working with the school. And then next to it, as you see this round building, it's supposed to be a kind of a social center where the children, they come there and they have a participation. They have an administration role in that room, in that space. And we call the pedagogical seed banks. And by that, I mean that we establish a seed bank with valuable seeds of different varieties of food crops. And those seeds now are managed by the children with the supervision of the school. And those seeds are given to farmers, which take, let's say, 1 kg and return 4 kgs of that seed. So with that system, the seed bank is constantly increasing in size, and the children are managing it and storing it and learning the value of seeds. The seeds is our genetic wealth, and we really have to take care of it to pass on to the next generation. Then next to it, we want to establish a little sports court, because sports is important recreation for the school, and that's there. And then most important is this food processing unit. Basically, the concept is that we'll establish a place where farmers can very professionally process their products and add value to those products. And then when it's added there, we would take care of the sales of those products with proper marketing and everything. So this collective processing unit joins farmers together to produce and be able to survive the difficult task of producing in a rural environment today, where everything is so competitive and the cost of things is very high. So we are trying to give them a better way of sharing their produce with the world. So that's the social area of Nandagram. And then there is the educational area. We have the main house, which is established with verandas all around. So there people can congregate, can talk, can have meals. Inside there's a hall where we can have lectures inside. And around it, there'll be hosting facilities, all very simply and with local materials, like hyper adobe, small units like yurts or small rooms where you could stay, and then like cabins, small cabins. And then there is glamping and camping and different arrangements for people to stay here. There's also an ashram which we want to establish for people who want to come and stay longer periods and learn from here, right? For teaching, the classrooms, we use the traditional trees which are here. There is the baraúna. Baraúna is a tree which is very strong and resilient in this part of the world. And this tree, under it, we want to establish a classroom. And like this, under different trees, we'll establish this structure where students can learn in a very traditional way. And then finally, we will have this round structure called geodesica, which is called a multi-purpose hall. So within this 20 acres, we'll establish something like 5 acres, 6 acres for crops, where students will see how to produce in that system and replicate in their places. So everything is run by principle. It's a principle-based project. Nandagram is trying to gather all the scientific information and bring it together in a package where anybody could understand that living off the land is possible. And that's supposed to be our guiding model for living labs across the globe. So this is our zero living lab, where we really experiment how to make a living lab. And so far in 3 years, we've been able to green the place in a marvelous way. You can just observe what was in 2022 and what has become in 2025. And we hope to expand these agroforestry areas into more or less, would say, 6 to 8 acres of the property will be agroforestry productions. And with that income from the produce, from this collective production unit, the living lab can be self-sustainable. And a few families can live in this place. So we are replicating that model into different places. And then it's very scalable. But let's say now I have a farm of 100 acres and I want to connect to farmers around, which total something like 1,000 acres. So immediately the living lab has all the systems to address the issues that local farmers are facing and become relevant. And then the preaching mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu finds another channel of communication. So that's what the Living Lab is looking and trying to do. And we hope that you liked Nandagram. Come and visit, support us in developing a Living Lab. It's a really important model for the future. Hare Krishna.